This is a great platform to, yes, better myself as an individual, but to also give back to the community and inspire young women to go after their dreams fully and fearlessly.
Blushing Rishi chatting with that lovely young lady. Well, we continue with the program. Inspired by the groundbreaking Supreme Court ruling in April, which deemed T&T's sodomy law unconstitutional, members of the LGBTQI community on Saturday took to the streets of Port of Spain in the country's first ever Gay Pride Parade. The parade, which was preceded by a family day at Nelson Mandela Park, St. Clair, attracted members of the organizations and other civil society groups and individuals from throughout the country. Joining us on set is none other than the chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Pride Arts Festival, Rudy CNMG. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning and thank you for having us. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
How was your weekend?
It was monumental, didn't it? It was emotional and overwhelming and incredibly positive. The entire committee and the community couldn't have expected something better.
Did you expect, so you did expect something like this? We
expected, because you would recall that this festival was launched on the 22nd of June. So during the last few weeks, the amazing outpouring of support and positivity encouraged us. So we were expecting a great turnout, but when it actually takes place and you see such diversity across ages, genders, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, you see non-LGBTQI persons, allies coming out, persons of influence, it really hits you. And in that moment, many of us, we became very emotional because it was a dream that came true, literally.
Was it perfectly spotless and smooth in terms of all the events? Was it interrupted in any way, that sort of thing?
We are proud to say that Trinidad and Tobago welcomed us, showed us great support. None of the events were interrupted. Persons had asked about expectations of violence or opposition. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service did a marvelous job. They came forward and they protected and served fairly. The Port of Spain City Corporation was in support, and many other persons, the EMA and all the other authorities. So we are very thankful and blessed to report that it was event-free.
Incident-free.
Incident-free.
Correct. So you started with a family day.
Yes.
And then following that, what were the events?
So the family day was very important because it provided a space for allies especially, and family members, as the name suggests, of the LGBTQI community to come together and really begin the day with giving thanks, as well as having a moment of remembrance for those who passed, especially Sasha Fierce, who was tragically murdered in that very park. And that's one of the reasons we chose Nelson Mandela Park to host the first ever fair. And then that would have ended between 2 and 3, and everyone started mobilizing, and we went onto the streets and paraded all the way down Tragrit Road up to our final resting grounds.
So you all were decked in those beautiful rainbow colors.
You saw true Trinidad and Tobago style. It was carnival in July, as some people put it. You saw persons in costumes, ethnic garb, rainbow themed gear, and just general everyday clothing. People came from the gym in track pants. They didn't want to miss out. So you really saw Trinidad and Tobago at its best.
So the parade itself, how many people you would say it turned out?
The police estimated that between the fair and the parade, we got close to 400 persons, if not more. And then if you look at our social media stats, you would see that thousands more tuned in, because of course there are many, many others who are still not yet comfortable and feel vulnerable, that they're not ready to come out into a public space like that and participate, but they supported us from online and wherever they could in spirit.
Now, it was particularly emotional for you. Why was that?
I have been an activist since I was 15 years old. And as I said in my closing remarks, throughout my life, believe it or not, there were times when people said, you shouldn't, you can't, that's not good. And persons like my mother, who told me, you can, you should, and you must, really encouraged and inspired me to do this type of work. And everything else that I've done in my life is about national development and trying to give back to those who don't have privilege and are vulnerable. And when I stood on the street and saw this mass of people coming, and I thought about, I'm getting a little emotional now, but when I think about all the persons that we've lost over the years because of homophobia and prejudice, and how many people cannot live a full life, but to see this manifest in my home country, I don't have to fly out to enjoy and be proud of my orientation anymore. I can stay right here. So that really touched me, and I saw people also feeling that, and it was just overwhelming.
You spoke about mothers' support and that sort of thing. Your mom told you you can and you will. Also on television, I think I glimpsed where a mother actually held her son's hand.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
During the festival, we actually had a theatre night where Raymond Chukong did a theatrical reading from his play Norman, Is That You? He performed his role, which was the father, when the father found out that the son was a homosexual. And that session was geared towards parents and their children, and we had about 7 or 8 parents and kids turn out. And it's important to see that level of support, that not all families turn their backs on their children, and we're hoping that other parents who might have a little sense of misgiving or uncertainty or fear to really understand that at the end of the day, this is the same child that you birthed, and they need your love and support. So for those of us that were blessed and fortunate to have that in our lives, it has ensured that we have remained positive and inspired. And there would have been challenges, but I really want to make a call to all parents of LGBTQI persons to really love them and work through with them whatever uncertainty and fear you might have, and just support them and be there for your children.
Were there also religious groups who were opposed to the event present at the event?
Actually, there was a small group of persons. They did not necessarily identify, at least to me, which body they represented. So I can't say which one it was. Probably about 8 persons. But interestingly enough, inside of the fair and the parade, there were many persons who are of faith, non-LGBTQI and otherwise, and they represented, and they came to us and told us, listen, don't worry with what certain people may be saying from a dogmatic point of view. We love you, and we are of you. We know that you're family and friends, and we're here to support you, and that meant a lot to us as well.
I don't think I ever asked you this question, but what are your thoughts on those who quote scriptures and that sort of thing against what it is the Pride Parade represents and that sort of thing? What are your thoughts on that?
I would like to remind them that, well, one of my grandparents was of the Islamic faith, and he always said to me that in Islam, when you see wrong, the first thing you must do is act against it. If you can't do that, you must speak against it. And if you can't do that, you must pray about it, which is the weakest form of activism in Islam. So what we are actually doing, Werner, is standing and acting and speaking and praying about what we see as wrong, which is really the exclusion of persons' human rights, as well as violence and abuse against members of this community and anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago and the world. Any type of violence or abuse and exclusion from human rights must be acted against. That must be opposed. So to them, I would say, read the scripture again and focus on what are the true teachings of all philosophies, that love is love and God is love and love is divine. And the rainbow that preceded the festival the next morning suggests to me that the powers are on our side and are celebrating with us what we stood for on Saturday.
So what's the next step?
We're going to take some self-care time, process, mentally rebuild, because it did take a lot of energy, and I want to thank Sharice and Terry-Ann and Kennedy and Kaiso, AJD, all the donors and partners that made this a reality. You know, so many, countless that I can't name. But we're having our post-event analysis in mid-August, and the T&T Pride Arts Festival is expected to be a year-long series of events that leads up to Pride in June, July. So it won't be as condensed as it was this year because we only had a few weeks to plan. Right. So you will be hearing more about us, and many of the events, again, will be geared towards community building, helping those who are vulnerable, and spotlighting the positive contribution of LGBTQI persons in Trinidad and Tobago.
What does this weekend success mean to the organization now?
It means that we were right, that Trinidad and Tobago is ready. This is the time and space to have this conversation, and for members of the LGBT community to really feel proud about themselves. It means that there is support and there is need for this type of work to complement what the NGOs are doing. For example, CAISO focuses on the Equal Opportunity Act and the inclusion of sexual orientation. This is a space for persons to discuss around those activists and really come forward and provide a different form of activity and space and community building. So for us, it's symbolic, it's inspiring, and it means that we have a lot more work to do.
And my final question to you, what is your vision for the LGBTQI community in Trinidad and Tobago?
My vision is that they grow and are able to live their truth and fulfill their potential in their own country, where they will be protected and loved by their fellow citizens, so that they may continue to contribute as we have always been contributing to national development. So that's my real vision. It's nothing other than what the average citizen wants for themselves. No special treatment, just an equal space, share the nation, and remember that love is love.
And what are your closing comments? What can we expect next?
You can expect a series of engaging public activities where all are invited, and you can expect a number of persons from the LGBTQI community to feel better about themselves and to continue to contribute to national development. And we welcome everyone to join us and visit queertt.com for more information. And we look forward to your ideas and suggestions. Send them in.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Same here. Thank you very much.
We've been chatting with the chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Pride Arts Festival, Rudy Hanamji. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. News is up next. I'm Vina Bharat. Have a great day.